Neil Johnson, excited to be with you and always excited to share the news with you, especially this news. The left has no idea what's coming. They really don't. And it's going to be an eye opening experience for them when these next set of off year elections come up. And I'm going to dive into this. This is dealing with New Jersey. It's also dealing with Virginia. It's dealing with some other issues as well. But the left has a real problem of political violence. It's not, I mean, we've seen the attempted assassinations of Donald Trump on twice, maybe three times, depending upon what you want to read, and then also the assassination of the beloved Charlie Kirk, which has done more to spark a revival than anything that's happened in recent years. He did more to turn college kids to Christ than probably anybody else in the last years. So this is it's getting really interesting. But folks, I've got a big report. We're going to go through a little historical context here on polling and what this all means and what this looks like. And what I want you to do for a second is take yourself out of the bubble that you live in. And what I mean by this is I want you to look at things through the lens of a centrist American. Now, most of you who follow my channel are very, very conservative folks, okay? And you do not trust the government. There are people who do. I know. You're thinking, oh, come on, Neil, really? No, there are. So here's what I want you to think about. I want you to think about what happened in Chicago in the last couple of days. I want you to think about ICE agents being surrounded, rammed, and the Chicago Police Department being told not to respond and assist law enforcement. Okay? Now, after January 6th, I talked to a lot of people. I am constantly talking to people, whether it's the grocery store, gas pumps. I've talked about this before, but whether it's to talk to them about Jesus or elections or whatever, I'm always looking to get a pulse on people and what's going on. So there were a number of people who even voted for Donald Trump, who have problems with January 6th, okay, and not the problems that you have. People have a natural tendency to want social structure, social order, okay? So I'm asking you to look at this as a centrist. When you look at the fact that ICE agents were rammed, surrounded, and the Chicago Police Department was told to stand down and not help, folks, that is not what centrist America wants. It's not what you want either. But I'm just telling you that it is not playing well for Democrats in centrist America. So now we're going to go into a couple things here. So you guys have probably heard about Jay Jones. This is the guy who is running for the Attorney General office in Virginia. Now, how many of you have seen the release of the Jay Jones text messages where he actually talks about going to people's funerals and pissing on their graves, talking about Gilbert gets 2 bullets to the head. Only when people feel pain personally do they move on policy, fantasizing about the death of a lawmaker's children. Okay? He went on to say, do I think Todd and Jennifer are evil and they're breeding little fascists? Yes. Okay, these are the extremists of the Democrat Party, of the modern Democrat Party. And there are people who are, kind of sounding that siren song to the Democrats and saying, hey, we might want to be a little more cautious here. But they're not listening. And I'm going to show you exactly what's going on there. They have no idea what's coming. I'm going to show you some polling numbers as well that show you how this is paralleling and mirroring other races where Republicans have had late gains. So do me a favor and smash that like so we can get this news out. Also, do me a favor and check out my sponsor, MyPillow. You guys know the constant assault and attack that Mike Lindell has been under. Okay, right now you can get the Percale sheets for $29.88. That's any color, any size. Those are a fabulous sheet. Now, I prefer the Giza sheets. They're a little bit more, but for the liberals, you can buy them Percale. For yourself, maybe get yourself some Giza. I don't know. But free shipping as well. The towels are in stock. Folks, those towels always sell out. Okay, so go get yourself some of the towels and get them for Christmas gifts. Also, that Rev 7 energy drink, I love it. And the other big thing right now is the premium pillows. But if you don't have a travel pillow, you need one, because I just got back from elk hunting. I used it in the hotel, I used it in the tent. Okay, I love it. But this Jay Jones, he's obviously a radical nut job. And we're going to talk a little bit about him, but I want to go back to something before I get into the polling information. This is an article from 2024. This is by Matt Taibbi, and it's called How America's Accurate Election Polls Were Covered Up. So how many of you trust election polls? Let's just say it. Just do a quick lumberjack logic survey right now, yes or no. Thank you for smashing that like. I see that number going up. Thank you so much, folks. Yes or no? Do you trust election polls? Okay. A lot of you are saying no. Okay, here's the thing. I do trust some election polls. I just want you to know that going into this. There's good polls, bad polls, and then there's an aggregate of the polls. Real Clear Politics started doing this years ago, where they take an average out, whether they're slanted to the left, the right, or whatever. They're just trying to be the most accurate pollsters. One of the ways that you can find really accurate polling information is if you can find out internal polls for the campaigns. And why is that? See if you can answer that question. Why are the internal polls for the campaigns more accurate? As you're answering that, I'm going to get into this. The Real Clear Politics national average was removed by Wikipedia before the election. This is going back to the 2024 election. Hey, kitties never die. And the New York Times denounced its failure to skew data. That's right. The New York Times denounced its failure to skew data. A solution to the mystery of crappy polling. So listen to this. John McIntyre couldn't believe it. Again, this article is from November 15th of 2024. So post-election in 2024. John McIntyre couldn't believe it. The publisher of the Real Clear Polling National Average, America's first presidential poll aggregator, woke on October 31st to see his product denounced in the New York Times. Launched in 2002 and a long mainstay of campaign writers and news consumers alike, the RCP average, he learned, was part of a torrent of partisan rubbish being weaponized to deflate Democrats' enthusiasm and undermine faith in the entire system. All quotes from the New York Times. They actually wrote that our problem was that we didn't weight the results, says an incredulous McIntyre. That we didn't put a thumb on the scale. Do you understand what I'm just saying here? The New York Times wrote that the problem with the Real Clear polling average aggregate was that they were not putting a thumb on the scale, that they were not weighing the results. Now, Real Clear Politics does something else that's really interesting, and this is why I love their site. So I recommend, if you're looking for polls, go to Real Clear Politics, because here's what they do. They rate the polls. They rate them. Meaning they'll take a look at polls, the pollsters, and they'll say, were they accurate? Were they not? Did they slant Democrat? Did they slant Republican? So you can look, and they just compare their polling data to the actual election results, and you can find out if these pollsters are any good. Okay? So it's a very good resource. And because I just want to know the numbers, like what's real, okay? And what are we up against? Okay, so here we go. The Times ended its screed against RCP's scarlet-dominated electoral map projection by quoting John Anzalone, Joe Biden's former chief pollster, who said, there's a ton of garbage polls out there, but being called garbage in America's paper of record was nothing compared to what happened to RCP at Wikipedia. 6 months ago, when again, this is from 2024, but 6 months prior, when former Wikipedia chief Catherine Mayer became CEO of NPR. Are you guys connecting the dots here? So this is Catherine Mayer, the one who came out and said that, that we're all racists and everything. You guys have seen all her crazy quotes, all right? I've played them before. But when Catherine Mayer became CEO of NPR, video emerged of her talking about strategies at Wikipedia. I shared this video before. She said the company eventually abandoned its free and open mantra when she realized this radical openness did not end up living to the intentionality of what openness can be. Free and open recapitulated too many of the same power structures, resulting in too much emphasis on the Western canon, written tradition, and this white male westernized construct around who matters. She went on to say, folks, in another video, that the truth is getting in the way of actual reporting. And no, I'm not kidding on that. Okay, so I'm gonna go back from that. So I've covered this on polling. Hopefully you kind of get where I'm coming from. Okay, so you got Jay Jones releasing all these crazy text messages, fantasizing about going to funerals and pissing on people's graves, shooting people in the head. And they're the same people, folks. Just understand, he's talking about shooting another politician in the head. And these are the same people who want to take away your guns. Yeah. You must all understand the hypocrisy of this, the blatant hypocrisy. Okay, it's wild. The Democrats are the party of violence, and they have a real problem with debate, with moderation, with anything. Okay, now let's go on here. I'm going to go to the American Spectator. This article is titled, "Yes, Virginia, Jay Jones is evil. Yet the Democrats want this creature to be the Commonwealth's chief law enforcement officer." Now, folks, how many Democrats, this is a question to make sure you're up on the news of this Jay Jones thing. How many Democrats have called for Jay Jones to step out of the race? Was it 5, 10, 20? I mean, because Republicans, you know how there'd be like hundreds of them. Oh, we want to distance ourselves from this guy. Step out of the race. Lisa, good to see you on. 0. That is actually the correct answer. That's right. None. 0. 0 have called for him to step out of the race. Now, some have made weak statements about what he said, okay, because this is what they do. You need to understand Occam's razor here. It may just be that this is what the Democrat Party believes, that people need to be assassinated if they don't agree with them. Okay? So, onto the article. Remember how many Democrats called in vain for the resignation of former Virginia Governor Ralph Northam when his penchant for performing in blackface was discovered in 2019? Among the most vocal was Abigail Spanberger, who then represented the Commonwealth's 7th District in Congress. Now, Spanberger is the nominee for the Virginia 2025 gubernatorial contest. Spanberger is now oddly reluctant to call for the withdrawal of her party's vile nominee for Attorney General, Jay Jones. Evidently, musing about the murder of a GOP lawmaker is not as disturbing as a Halloween getup. You guys get the absolute lack of moral equivalency between those two, right? So one guy is dressing up as blackface, the other is calling for the murder of candidates for office and office holders. The other is dressing up in a black face. Okay? Wow. This is who these people are. For anyone unfamiliar with this creepy story, which was first reported by National Review, it involves a series of deranged texts sent by Jones to a Republican lawmaker in August of 2022. He was somehow triggered by kind words. This is what's really interesting. It was by kind words spoken about a recently deceased Democrat. So the problem with this Democrat, according to Jay Jones, is that the Democrat was too centrist and was actually praised by Republicans for being decent. Folks, are you getting this? So Jay Jones, what upset him so much was that a Democrat acted a little more centrist. Okay, hold on. I'm going to go on. He was somehow triggered by kind words spoken about a recently deceased Democrat colleague by Republican Todd Gilbert, who was then Speaker of Virginia's House of Delegates, and other Republicans. Jones' perverse reaction was to send a barrage of increasingly alarming texts to Republican delegate Carrie Coyner in which he speculates about assassinating Gilbert and goes on to fantasize about desecrating his grave. Okay? So I am going to read to you this part of the text exchange. I've given you summation before. Okay? So the person, this would be Carrie Coiner, says, they say nice things about everyone, LOL. And Jay Jones goes on to say in 3 separate texts, if those guys die before me, I will go to their funerals to piss on their graves, send them out awash in something. Carrie responds, Jay Jones. He responds with 4 additional, 3 people, 2 bullets. Gilbert, Hitler, and Pol Pot. Gilbert gets 2 bullets in the head. Spoiler, put Gilbert in the crew with the 2 worst people you know, and he receives both bullets every time. Carrie responds, Jay, please stop. LOL. He responds, LOL. Okay. And then Carrie says, it really bothers me when you talk about hurting people or wishing death on them. And Jones reportedly continued the crazy by calling Coiner to explain that he was simply saying the only way public policy changes is when policymakers feel pain themselves, like the pain that parents feel when watching their children die from gun violence. He asked her to provide counterexamples to disprove his claim. By way of illustrating his point, he suggested he wished Gilbert's wife could watch, listen to this. He suggested he wished Gilbert's wife could watch her own children die in her arms so that Gilbert might reconsider his political views, prompting Coiner to hang up the phone in disgust. Incredibly, Jones subsequently reiterated his demented viewpoint in his final text exchange. And Carrie said, you're talking about hoping Jennifer Gilbert's children would die. And he replied, yes, I've told you this before. Only when people feel pain personally do they move on policy. So the death of her children is worth it to him. It should be obvious that Jones is not only unfit to be Virginia's Attorney General. Folks, we're talking about the chief law enforcement officer of a state. He is also a serious liability to Spanberger's gubernatorial campaign. Nonetheless, her response to him was woefully inadequate. Here was her response. After learning of these comments earlier today, I spoke frankly with Jay about my disgust with what he had said and texted. I made clear to Jay that he must fully take responsibility for his words. What I've also made clear that as a candidate and as the next governor of our Commonwealth, I will always condemn violent language in our politics. If she believes that this is going to cut it, folks, she may well suffer the fate of Terry McAuliffe. Okay? Spanberger's GOP opponent in the governor's race, Winsome Earl Sears, says that this is not good enough. Okay, well, obviously she's going to say that. Politicians say that. But it isn't good enough. And it gets worse for the Democrats who want to recapture Virginia. Even the editorial board of the Washington Post, folks, listen to me now. Even the editorial board of the Washington Post, some people call it the Washington Compost, one of the most liberal rags in the nation, okay, has suggested that Jay Jones should not be the AG. I quote, curbing the epidemic of political violence will require leaders who do not excessively inflame routine partisan conflict. But text messages that Jay Jones, the Democratic nominee for Virginia Attorney General, sent to a GOP legislature, which emerged Friday afternoon, cast doubt on whether he has the temperament to become the state's top law enforcement officer. You don't say. Does it cast doubt, folks? I mean, are you feeling a little doubtful about Jay Jones now? So why doesn't Spanberger push the eject button? Folks, she's afraid of her left flank. And this is where it gets really interesting, okay? Because I'm going to go away from this one. And now I want you to catch this. And this actually comes from The Atlantic. Again, I've been reading a couple opinion pieces from The Atlantic lately because they want to win. They're nutso, but they want to win. And they realize that people will not continue to elect this kind of radicalism. Okay? So, listen to this piece. Democrats still have no idea what went wrong. This out of The Atlantic, the most far left liberal crazy rag known to man. Okay? And this is by Jonathan Chait, who's a wacky. Listen to this. This is where it gets wild. I'm telling you, folks, they don't have any idea what's coming, and wait till I get to the polls. On a recent panel of progressive activists analyzing what went wrong in the 2024 election, the author, activist, and failed political candidate Qasim Rashid spoke with confidence about the way forward for the Democratic Party. The problem, he insisted, was not that the Democrats had strayed too far from public opinion, but that the party had grown too solicitous of saying it, of it. Saying the right thing timidly, he proclaimed, is less effective than saying the wrong thing loudly. Rashid's argument was anything but timid, and it certainly played well in the Washington, D.C. room where the progressive donor network Way to Win was holding a confab called Persuasion 2025. I'm giving you an inside look at the Democrat Party, the left-wing progressivism that has infected their party, and what they're doing. Pay attention. Yet Rashid meant for this event to be more than just a pep talk among allies. His call for a confident, undiluted progressive platform is how you see people flip red seats to blue. I'm not kidding. Rashid's track record, now listen to this. This is where it gets funny. Get ready to laugh. Rashid's track record as a candidate does not quite bear out his confident assessment. He has run for office 3 times, falling short every time. In 2020, he lost his race for Congress by 16 points in a district that Joe Biden lost by 4. Okay, again, let me repeat. He lost his race by 16 points. He did 4 times worse than Joe Biden, but he's going to tell him how to win. Folks, we are so fortunate that the crazies are running the Democrat Party. I mean, are you guys happy? Another Lumberjack Logic poll. How happy are you that the crazies are running the Democrat Party and giving them their way to win? This is awesome. He went on to found a firm specializing in relational messaging to inspire and mobilize communities to advance economic justice, social equality, climate action, and protect our democracy. It's called, unironically, Just Win. Now, think about the funny thing of this, okay? He has talked about advancing economic justice, social equality, and then climate action. Do you know that nothing is promoting economic injustice more than climate change and the response to it? And the electricity bills that people are paying right now are insane. And who is it affecting most? The rich or the poor? Who is it affecting most? The rich or the poor people? He's talking about economic justice and climate action in the same sentence. And he calls it Just Win. The purpose of this conference was to reassert the left's strategy for regaining control of the Democrat Party, and at least in theory, a national governing majority. Yet beneath the bold proclamations, one could detect an undercurrent of defensiveness. See, they're not ready to admit what's going on here, why they're losing so badly. They're still being defensive. After almost a decade of nearly unchallenged supremacy, the progressive movement's hold on the party is no longer certain. At the end of the Obama era, most Democrats, Jonathan Chait says, myself included, this is where it gets good. This is the thing, folks. This is what they saw. I've talked about this before. At the end of the Obama era, most Democrats saw liberalism's ascent as nearly inevitable. Do you guys all remember the phrase demographics is destiny? Accordingly, they saw little cost in getting ahead of where public opinion was obviously headed. When Senator Bernie Sanders challenged Hillary Clinton from the economic left in 2016, she replied by outflanking him to the left on social issues While breaking with Obama on moderate positions on trade, she opposed the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and education, she backed away from his support for charter schools and other reform measures. Okay? So Barack Obama, as bad as he was, okay? As bad as he was, and he was horrible. I'm telling you, folks, he was bad. Understood that he needed to moderate on a couple things to keep moving America in the direction he wanted. But you realize they don't get it today. See, I said this before. They went too far too fast. 2020 was the litmus test. They went too far too fast, and America has now rejected them. In 2020, nearly the entire presidential field raced leftward. Sanders, having seen Clinton's supporters attack him on race and gender, incorporated identity politics into his messaging. So Sanders, who had long been this supposed proponent of the working class and actually received their votes, tilted leftward on social issues to outrun the rest of the crazies. Debates, folks, this is so great because we've got this footage today when they tell us that they're not for healthcare for illegal immigrants, but debates turned into contests over who could treat undocumented immigrants more generously or promise a more sweeping domestic agenda. Biden, who most Democrats and reporters alike had left for dead, won the race largely because he, as the only well-known candidate who had not abandoned the Obama legacy, occupied the ideological ground where most of the party's voters remained. But the fact is he didn't, because we saw when he took office that he tilted leftward even more because they lied to get into office. See, that's the great thing about Trump. Trump, promises made, promises kept. He told you, he was going to run this deportation operation. He told you he was going to close the border. And all we needed, folks, my favorite line of Donald Trump's of all time, because they constantly told us they need the laws in Congress. They needed, Joe Biden needed these abilities to actually close the border. But it turned out all we needed was what, folks? Fill in the blank. In that context, Kamala Harris's promise to the ACLU that she would support taxpayer-financed gender transition surgeries for prisoners and detained migrants received little attention. It was just one more edgy leftist policy commitment in a campaign that consisted of little else, and her floundering candidacy soon dropped out of sight. The promise seems to have played a large role in Harris's doomed presidential campaign 5 years later. Harris, whose position on the ticket, they're talking the 2020, okay, whose position on the ticket itself was a sop to activists who had defended a black female vice president. Was she black, though, folks, or was she Indian? Or was she white? Or did she eat grits? Did she eat greens? Did she wash them in a bathtub? Remember all the goofy stuff we had to deal with there? Democrats to reckon the ways in which progressive activists had not just driven the entire field leftward, but also pressured Harris to adopt a position so toxic that inspired the Trump campaign's most effective ad. This lone commercial with its potent tagline, "Kamala is for they, them, President Trump is for you," moved viewers by an estimated 2.7 points, a shift larger than Trump's margin of victory in most swing states. See, this is and they still don't get it. Because watch, I'm going to show you. Moderate Democrats have since staged a counteroffensive, okay? So they've got the majority Democrats. They've got a magazine, The Argument. I'm not going to even get into this. Precision in 2025 was the leftist report. Representative Greg Caesar, a progressive Democrat from Texas, rebuked all who blame progressive organizations for the Democratic Party's problems. Jennifer Fernanda Ancona, co-founder of Way to Win, called for an alignment of party and movement forces, which apparently, folks, means bringing Democrats closer to progressive opinion positions rather than avoiding positions and rhetoric that alienate the majority of the electorate. Numerous speakers warned against throwing any progressive constituency under the bus, a phrase that has become a term of art in the factional battle. Wait, but why wouldn't they throw under the bus? Because I thought Kamala liked yellow school buses. I mean, they were her favorite, yellow school buses. Numerous speakers, remember, because we have been now unburdened by what has been, Kamala. Numerous speakers warned against throwing these people under the bus. Democrats should not retreat from positions taken on behalf of allies, however unpopular they may be. No compromise with the electorate was the conference's standing order. Excuse me. This doctrine might sound irrational to anyone who recognizes that winning elections demands the support of that very electorate. Progressive activists have developed a coherent, if not persuasive, argument for it. First, they denied, this goes back to the New York Times piece, the piece I was talking about by Matt Taibbi. They denied that polls showing any left-wing positions as unpopular convey meaningful information. They're denying that. A progressive strategist roundly dismissed the relevance of polling as pollingism and rejected the very notion that politicians can win support by heeding public opinion. Do you know how, I mean, whether you like him or not, Bill Clinton, do you know why he won and why he was effective? I used to call him the poll-checking president. Kind of drove me nuts. But that's why he won. That's why he signed welfare reform. Okay, so politics is a game of sausage making, and you will not always get, hear me out on this, folks, stop the political purity tests. Stop them. Because there are positions I definitely disagree with Donald Trump on. You guys know that. I've talked about him in the past. Okay? But stop the political purity tests. Okay? Just stop. We need to win. We move in the primaries. Okay? We move in the primaries to get the people we want in there. And Trump was obviously the best choice. Not even close. Okay? Because he was going to win. And he was going to seal our border. He was going to stop human trafficking. He was going to do all this. Okay? Now, let me get to the end of this article because I think this is... Listen to this. Attempting to disarm right-wing's attacks by abandoning positions that are unpopular with these and other voters is not only unnecessary but also futile. You cannot feed your opposition's narrative, Shanker Osorio argued. She is even more absolute on her website. Conventional wisdom says to meet people where they are, but on most issues, where they are is unacceptable. This is why they have a violence problem. They believe that the beliefs of the American people are unacceptable, and so they need to be shot or they need to have power forced upon them and ruled over them. The article ends, rapidly transforming the American public's belief is a daunting task, all the more so if you dismiss their current values as unacceptable. Remember bitter clingers, okay? Bitter clingers, guns and Bible, basket of deplorables, and so on. This is how they actually think of you. That's why it's okay if you get offed in a political assassination. That's why they fantasize about offing people. Rapidly transforming the American public's belief is a daunting task. All the more so if you dismiss their current values as unacceptable. The Democrat Party's pragmatic wing has been pleading to broaden the tent, ideally before the Trump administration stamps out all opposition. The party's progressive seems determined to re-educate the public rather than compromise for their votes. This is a seductive approach if the goal is ideological purity. It is a problem only if the party hopes to win elections. That's why I'm telling you. Drop the purity test on politicians, please. We need to grab consensus and we need to win. And that's how you can then move the needle on the ideological positions. Okay? Are you guys making sense? Or not are you guys? Am I making sense to you on this? Because it's really an important point. Before I go on to the next thing, I want you to get this. So many of us we have these political purity tests, okay? But you need to understand, you need to drop those for winning elections so that then you can move that stuff along, okay? Jeff, I'm telling you, I just made the wrong comment. So, but you guys understand this? That you have to win and then you can move the needle. The Democrats aren't winning, that's why they can't move the needle. And instead they're lashing out, okay? So again, we don't always get everything we want. All right. Now, moving forward to this, I'm going to show you something. Okay, and we're going to open this up a little wider. This is results from. I'm gonna go to the 2021 election results. We're going to talk about this. So Youngkin won by 1.9. The Real Clear Politics average was 1.7. This stuff is fairly accurate, folks. Okay, it's fairly accurate. We saw this Spanberger leading by double digits, 17, 12, 15, 9, 12, 12, 10. The lead has now shrunk to 8.3. Now, I'm going to bring you into 2021. I'm going to go to this. So here is the Virginia governor's race. Look at this. When did that shift actually happen? The Democrat was leading the whole time until right up before the election. Okay? So I want you to understand these are electorate moving events when you see people calling for the death of other people. And you know, it ended up the average Youngkin ended at plus 1.7. That was a shift. Let's see. So we're right at the beginning of October. So that was a shift of 5 and 1.7, 6.7 points. We are currently in this race at an average of 8.3. Do you see how close this is getting? My camera's on reverse angle. I switched that just for you fine folks. I did. I switched it all for you. Anyways, you guys told me how to do that. But whatever, it is what it is. Now, okay, so there's our 2021. Now I want to show you something else. We're going to go to New Jersey governor. Okay, Cheryl's lead is down to 3.3 over Citarelli's. We're down to 3.3 on the spread there. And this has moved consistently. Look at this. Just back in June, according to one poll, Cheryl had a 21-point lead. You guys getting this? These elections that are coming up, this is it's kind of like the Wellstone funeral. So for those who don't know, in Minnesota, Paul Wellstone died. I think it was, what was that, around 2000? Michelle, you can probably help me out on that. Okay. I think it was 2000. Anyways, it was Paul Wellstone. I don't know if you guys remember Paul Wellstone, but he was very leftward, and he died in a plane crash. So late in the game, they brought in, yeah, Michelle said it was 2000. Late in the game, they brought in, who was that? Michael Dukakis, who had run for president? No, not Dukakis. Help me out here. Who was it? Oh, come on. I can see the guy. What was his name? Not Dukakis. It was, God darn, he's like a hero in Minnesota politics to the left. Michelle, help me out on this. 2000 election, it was, all right. The Sonoma Trollbot. Okay, I gotta just avoid the comments here for a second because I gotta get this. 2000, who was it? 2000 Minnesota Senate race. Humphrey, there it is. Thank you. I knew somebody get it. Yeah, Hubert H. Humphrey. Anyways, Humphrey was, you know, had run for president before. He had a long political history. Anyways, they brought him in to run against Norm Coleman, but then they televised the Wellstone Memorial. They televised the Wellstone Memorial. How many of you remember the Wellstone Memorial? How many of you remember that? Because what happened during the Wellstone Memorial, was that their crazy came out. And as a result, Norm Coleman won the race. Okay. And there's still a Wellstone Memorial at his plane crash up here in northern Minnesota. I've never been to it, but so here, and I want to show you this. So let's go to New Jersey. Breaking. New Jersey Republicans have extended their mail-in voting return rate and lead on Democrats yet again. Now, I'll admit, I'm not a fan of mail-in voting. You guys know that. So I'm just not even going to get into that whole debate. I'm just going to look at this as a thing right now. Mail voting, not males as in men, but mail as in the U.S. mail, is plus 6 points more red than at this point in 2024. Okay, you guys catch this? So here's the mail-in ballot return rates. Republicans are at 21.2, beating Dems, which are at 19%. The other is at 10.7. The return rates are that much better for the Republican. Republicans again padded their lead on ballot return rates, while Dems slightly padded their raw vote margin as expected. Republicans need a good setup to surge to in-person early voting on October 28th and Election Day. Any damage we can do to their firewall is meaningful. So this is a huge deal. So this is what's going on there. Now, again, we are seeing in the, where did that go? In the Virginia governor's race. It's another sombrero meme. I love it. Okay. Where am I going here? Let's go here. I'm going to search this quick. I'm going to get you guys some other numbers that'll give you some more hope. Okay. The 2025 Virginia governor's race narrows. Abigail Spanberger leads Republican Winsome Earl Sears now by only 3 points in the most recent poll. Okay. So it's getting closer. But there was another thing on ballot returns in Virginia. Wait, here we go. Okay, so we got Trafalgar has this race now at under 6 points. Coincidentally, that would be basically the shift in the Youngkin race when Youngkin won. Okay. Lieutenant Governor, Virginia AG, that is down to a few points. Surprisingly, now, but this poll finished up, this is Trafalgar, they're pretty good, October 2nd. So this was 4 days ago. It was down to 3 points. He's going to lose. Jay Jones is going to lose. I think he's going to drag Spanberger right down with him. And it looks like we could get a win in New Jersey. We could sweep the off-year election. Now, many of you probably think, well, I don't live in New Jersey. I don't live in Virginia. Here's what you need to understand about governor's races and why they're so important, okay? There's multiple reasons. When governors are heading up a state and you have more states controlled by the governors of your party, you will get better results in that state that spans out nationally. But the other thing, this is where you get oftentimes the best presidential candidates is from governors, okay? From governors. We're having a tractor debate on here. Carolyn, favorite tractor? What is everybody's favorite tractor? Does everybody have a tractor? I got a tractor. Everybody have a tractor? My son has a Farmall tractor. Just curious. I have a Kubota. I have a Kubota tractor. John Deere went all woke. That's the thing that got me irritated about John Deere. But I think they kind of came back. Katarina likes Case IH. Okay. Farmall, Lisa. So, yeah, Farmall Case, same gig. Okay. An Oliver and an Alice Chalmers. Those are good old tractors. Old John Deere. Yeah. Caterpillar. Man, they made some cool ones with the tracks. Anyways, folks, please go check out my sponsor, Mike Lindell. Support him, mypillow.com/lumberjack, or call the 800 number. Okay. 1-800-568-2865. Again, the towels, phenomenal towels. I'm telling you, you're going to love them. The sheets, $29.88 right now. Any color, any size on the percale sheets. Free shipping on your order. And the Rev 7 energy drink. Oh, and the premium pillows. Big deal on those. So, folks, are you all excited about this news that I shared today? Do you understand how they just do not get it? By the way, there's also a big case being decided at the Supreme Court this week. So how many of you know about the case Bost versus the Illinois State Board of Elections? Okay, how many of you know this case? Bost versus Illinois State Board of Elections. This has gone to court and then to appeal, and now is before the Supreme Court, and we're supposed to get a ruling on Wednesday. So this is a big one because what it deals with is early voting. Early voting. We have a national election day. So Bost is a Republican congressman out of the state of Illinois who has brought this case. And the court had argued, the Seventh Circuit Court ruled that Bost lacks, what's the word, folks? Help me out here. So this is a prior ruling. Bost, who ran for office, I would think he has a